Alice Miller sort of had this whole notion about 15 years ago that children had inalienable rights to be treated with decency and respect and concern and responsiveness. And that when those rights are violated, what comes out of that are children who are in some ways damaged or wounded or hurt, and that they carry those wounds into adulthood. And so, of course, I believe that those kind of early experiences and those key relationships, especially with parents, leave a mark. And of course, it does play out for some people in suicidal behaviors or threats or verbal behaviors.
Under the most painful circumstances, often the parent at their worst, the child will be traumatized in such a way that they tend to incorporate the feelings of the aggressor. They take that within themselves, and that introjection of those attitudes, feelings at those very severe moments become a part of the personality that can't be integrated. It's easier for the child to see themselves as bad, and that's why they're being rejected, than to realize that the parent is inadequate, because that would be traumatic. Their life depends on the parent. So they absolutely tend to take on themselves the blame.
I think the most destructive dynamic for development of suicide is rejection, a very early rejection. Rejection of the child is unwanted, and this sets off very other destructive processes. Another developmental process that takes place is the rejection of the child's body. This starts with parental care of the child's body. And if this is not done properly, with love, with sensitivity, with recognition of what the body needs, then there's little by little develops an estrangement between the self and one's body. The child tends to develop a defensive process to deal with all these problems by dissociation and physical dissociation. It means the child does not experience his body, he's estranged from his body is numb, and this later on can make it easier to carry out an aggressive act against the body. A very high tolerance for physical trauma, for physical pain through the dissociation, and a very low tolerance for mental pain. And mental pain is something that characterizes, I think, the suicidal person.
If we look at the environment that creates the ability to dissociate in a child, there's a parent who's terrifying in one way or another, and there's no safe haven. There's no other parent to go to for safety, or a grandparent, for instance, or anywhere to go. And that's when the child really learns to disconnect from themselves and learns physical dissociation as a survival mechanism to deal with what feels like an intolerable situation.
Part of the problem is that the child identifies with the person that's causing them harm and picks up their attitudes, their feelings, their way of thinking about themselves. And that way of thinking then becomes an alien part of the personality. These voices play a large part in how a person lives, or limits their life, or denies themselves gratification, or challenges relationships, or destroys their closest ties. It plays a significant part.